Hi, I am Professor Julie Weise, and this is a video for anyone who was thinking of reaching out to me about the possibility of me being their advisor in the history graduate program, either MA or PhD at the University of Oregon. First, I will say the fields in which I accept students. I accept students in Latinx history, Latino, Latina, Latinx history, particularly Mexican American history, 19th and 20th centuries. Really working on any topic or part of the United States, transnational work, really anything in the field of Mexican American and or Latino, Latina, Latinx history. I also accept students specifically in 20th century Mexican history, and that can be productive. I can co-advise with Professor Carlos Aguirre, who's generally our modern Latin Americanist, but in the very specific case of 20th century Mexico, I do feel qualified to be an advisor or to be certainly a secondary person on someone's committee with Professor Aguirre. Now, in terms of MA versus PhD, I feel very confident that we have an awesome program and an awesome place for you to get your master's degree with me in either Latino, Latina, Latinx history or 20th century Mexico here at the University of Oregon. The reason for that is that we can provide, and I personally can provide, very intense mentoring. We're a smaller program, and I think that really works to your advantage in the master's program. As you can see elsewhere on the history website, one of my recent MA students, Richard Velasquez, is now getting his PhD at Yale. Our department has a very good track record of placing students, and in many cases, first-generation college students in excellent PhD programs. I think the question of whether it makes sense to get a PhD with me as your major advisor is a little more complicated, because the fact that we're a small program means that I don't have a large program. It's not like you would be with so many different colleagues in the same field of Latino history or 20th century Mexico. And building that academic network is so important at the PhD level in a way that it's really not at the MA level. And so if you're just doing a topic, you want to write about Latinos in the South, which is my first book, or you want to write about the Mexican American history of Texas or something like that, or Illinois, I am probably not your best bet. I think that there's other programs that will serve you a lot better than me. However, if you are interested in combining Latino history with other strengths in the department, it could work well. So one example is environmental history. We have a top program in environmental history. So if you're interested in doing something at the intersection of environmental and Latinx history, I do think this could be a very good place for you to come. Similarly, if you're interested in writing about the Latinx history of the Pacific Northwest, of course, this could be a good place for that. We, have a lot of expertise because of our location, and there's just certain advantages to being in the region that I think if you're writing about the Pacific Northwest, it can make some sense to come here and work with me. That's not exclusive. I would say if you have a personal reason to be in Eugene, your partner is in law school here, and you really want to get your PhD with me, even though you're not at the intersection with either environmental or Pacific Northwest and my areas of expertise, by all means you can still reach out and we can talk about it. I'm not closed-minded about that, but I do think that in the majority of cases, if you're not intersecting with one of our other strength areas, you're going to be better served elsewhere at the PhD level. But I will repeat that at the MA level, I feel really confident about what a wonderful job we do training students in my fields. And if you have questions that didn't get answered in this video, or that you just want to reach out and introduce yourself so that I'm looking for your application when the time comes, please drop me an email. If you were to come here to work with me, again, because we're a small program, you'll be in seminars that are from a lot of different fields. So if I have grad students in the program, I will probably teach a graduate seminar at some point, so you will have me. But you'll also be taking history of capitalism or environmental history, like broad themed classes, which is so good for you to expand your way of thinking and the kinds of methodologies that you might use. We have a wonderful Latinx Studies program across our wonderful IRIS, which is Indigenous Race and Ethnic Studies. They have wonderful scholars in Latinx Studies there. We have in the Literature Department, in the Education Department, in the School of Planning, Policy, and Public Management, we have awesome people who do urban planning from a Latinx perspective. So there is opportunities all over the campus, and I'm very supportive of students exploring those opportunities and making connections outside of the history department in addition to inside of the history department. I guess the last thing I'll say is this usually isn't an issue, but you would want to have probably some familiarity with Spanish coming in if you're going to be working with me, or a clear plan as to how you're going to acquire that. That does not mean so-called fluency, but it does mean some comfort reading texts in Spanish. And if you don't have that, we should talk about what the plan would be to even get started if you were admitted the summer before you matriculate. So all of our students, at least at this time, are accepted with guaranteed positions as graduate employees, so basically teaching assistants. So that's part of what sets our master's program in particular apart, is that most master's programs don't include that. And so it means you get a salary. There's details up to date on the website as to what that salary is, and your tuition and health care are paid for. What I would likely do if you came to work with me at the MA level is encourage you to start thinking about your thesis early enough that you would be able to get to the field in the summer between your first and second years. And there is some department funding you can apply for to do that. So whether that's getting to archives in the Pacific Northwest, or maybe you're doing environmental history connected to Latino history in Arizona, so getting you to Arizona. Maybe you're doing transnational work or working on Mexico, you need to get to Mexico. Whatever it is, I would ideally like to start pointing in those directions early on in your master's program so that you could get to the field in that first summer, and then have some material to work with to write your master's thesis. And if you're doing a PhD, it really just depends on you and your situation as to when it would make sense for you to get out there and be doing